Hello students, today's topic will be respiration under the chapter life processes. As we already know that nutrition is the best part of the life process, and along with that the organisms will need energy, and from where they will get the energy by another life process, that is the breakdown of glucose, which is done by the help of the process that is respiration. So during respiration, food is broken down to release energy. That is, we get energy from the food with the help of the oxygen, and this gives us energy for the work that we do for the whole day. So let's first discuss about the different parts of the respiratory system in our body. So we have nose. There is one nose. There are two nostrils, and that leads to the nasal passage. And see here, it is written here nares. So the nose, the two holes of the nose are called as external nares, and there is nasal passage which contains fine hairs and mucus. The fine hairs and mucus of the nasal passage prevents the entry of any dust particles or insects or worms into the respiratory passage. And then there are two holes, that is the internal nares. This leads to the mouth cavity, that means the oral cavity, and which continues in the throat, and there is larynx, that is the voice box. So pharynx leads to the passage that is called the larynx. That is the upper end of the lungs, that means the windpipe. Below the windpipe there is lungs, so the upper part of the respiratory system consists of this larynx. And above that there is pharynx, which is the common opening for both the windpipe and the esophagus, that is the food pipe. This is common for both. And after that it separates out. So larynx is the beginning of the respiratory system, and it leads to lungs at last. So this sometimes this larynx is developed very much in the boys, and so it becomes like an apple. So it is called as Adam's apple. And this is the voice box from which we generate the sound. This leads to the trachea over the windpipe. Now trachea is the tube or the pipe which consists of C-shaped cartilages, and this looks like a C. So they are not fully encircled by the cartilage because they have to maintain the process of contraction and relaxation. So in order to prevent the total fixity of the windpipe, it is not fixed in a proper shape. It is not rigid, but it is with the C-shaped, so that the regular movements of inside the windpipe is easily maintained. So it is connected by C-shaped cartilage. This trachea is called the windpipe, which then branches into two bronchi. The bronchi further branches to form bronchioles, and the bronchioles leads to the two very developed respiratory structure in our body, that is the lungs. Now there are one pair of lungs in our body, and these are made up of alveoli, that is the air sacs, the sac-like structure which contains air and which helps us in diffusion of gases. So that is the air sacs, which is alveoli. So each lung is made up of millions of alveoli, and here diffusion of gases takes place. Now below the lungs there is a sheet of muscle which is called the diaphragm, and diaphragm is a muscular sheet which helps in increasing and decreasing the size of the chest cavity while breathing in and breathing out. So as you can see here, the normal shape of the diaphragm is dome shaped, and this along with the other parts of the respiratory system including trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs, alveoli helps in the process of our breathing and continues the different steps in respiration. Now here you can see this diagram. Here is the starting of the respiratory system, that is nasal passage, then enters the mouth cavity, there is pharynx, larynx, then there is trachea, as I showed you, that is they are made up of C-shaped cartilages. Here is the rib cage and the bronchi, bronchioles. Then each lung is made up of air sac, that is the alveolar sac or alveoli. And here you can see the diaphragm. These are the two lungs. So these are the structures that are present in our respiratory system. So what is a system? Made up of different parts. Cells combine to form tissues, tissues combine to form organs, and organs combine to form the system. So this is the respiratory system. Now I will tell you about how the air goes inside the lungs. Now if you can see here, starting from the nose, the air goes inside the nasal passage, which leads to internal layers, and then goes to throat, then pharynx, then it will go to larynx. The air is going through the larynx, then trachea, bronchi, bronchioles. This way it moves on, and there you can see the lungs. From bronchioles it goes to the lungs. It will reach to the alveoli, where diffusion of gases will take place. Now here lies the importance of alveoli, where you can see the diffusion of gases will take place in the alveoli. So what is this diffusion? The movement of molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration. So once again we'll see from the beginning what is entering to the alveoli. Here you can see oxygen is going in towards the throat, then going towards the pharynx. Now pharynx is the common passage that will allow the air to go into the lungs, that is towards the pharynx, and then trachea. It will direct, and it will direct the food to go into the food pipe. So this is a very critical point, where we can see there are two entrances. One is for the food pipe and one is for the windpipe. So see, if this is the passage, and here there is a covering or a membrane. Now this opening is the glottis, which allow only the air to go inside, and the membrane is there which closes and opens. Now this is glottis and this is epiglottis. Now epiglottis will close so that food particles will not enter into the windpipe. Correct? So this pharynx will lead to windpipe and food pipe. Food will always go to the food pipe and air will always go to the windpipe. Food particles cannot go into the windpipe directly into the lungs. Epiglottis will prevent, but by chance accidentally sometimes food may go inside. So that will be eliminated outside by coughing and rigorous coughing. So sometimes you might have experienced, if some food particles have entered, we would have coughed and given it out. So this is the epiglottis and the glottis system. So then the air will go, that means oxygen is moving to bronchi, bronchioles, and then coming to the lungs, and where the end part is what? Alveoli. So if you can see alveoli, what happens here? Oxygen is diffused out into the blood. That means from alveoli, diffusion of oxygen takes place. That is from high to low in the blood. Suppose this is the blood capillaries. So in the blood there is less concentration. In the capillaries there is less concentration of oxygen. So the oxygen will go into the capillaries. And here carbon dioxide is more. So it will diffuse into the alveoli. CO2. So from high to low, oxygen will go into the blood. From high to low, from the blood, it will go to the alveoli for further purification. So this is the work of the alveoli. That means diffusion of gases from higher concentration to lower concentration will take place here. So air goes inside, rich in oxygen, and is passed out by the process of diffusion into the blood. Then blood will give its carbon dioxide to the alveoli by the process of diffusion, and this way breathing is continued, and diaphragm helps in its process by increasing and decreasing the chest cavity. Now when the air has to go in, the size of the chest cavity has to increase. So we will increase the size of the chest cavity. The diaphragm will distend down, and the intercostal muscles that are present in between the ribs, they will also act here so that the chest cavity becomes larger. So when we breathe in, our ribs are lifted and the diaphragm is flattened, it goes down, chest cavity becomes larger. So air goes inside, because when the cavity is large, space is large, pressure is less, the air from outside will try to fill inside. And the blood will come, that means in the alveolar region, the carbon dioxide rich blood will come, their diffusion will take place just now as I told, and oxygen will be taken up by the blood and carbon dioxide has to go out. So then this size of the chest will decrease, diaphragm comes back to its normal dome shaped position. The intercostal muscles also helps in this by reducing the size of the chest cavity and then give up high pressure inside the chest cavity, inside the lungs, so the air will go outside. That is, the carbon dioxide will go outside. But during all this process, some amount of air will always remain inside the lungs. This is called as residual volume of air. So, why this residual volume of air always stays inside the lungs? Because sufficient time has to be given for the oxygen to be absorbed and carbon dioxide to be released. So, air cannot be totally given out or taken inside the lungs, but some amount always remains there in order to maintain the balance and giving sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and carbon dioxide to be released. So this process of taking in air and giving out air is helped by the intercostal muscles in between the ribs, the diaphragm, and the lungs. So increasing and decreasing in the size of the lungs and the chest cavity matters a lot while breathing takes place. And when the body size of the animal is large, the diffusion pressure cannot take care of oxygen delivery to all the parts. So there are different respiratory pigments, but in our body there is one respiratory pigment, that is hemoglobin. So what is the residual volume? The amount of air that is always present in the lungs. Lungs is never empty. And just now I told that for the larger organisms, something should be there to carry the oxygen to different parts of the body, because we are larger organisms. So that is the respiratory pigment, which is called the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, and this is carried by the blood. So the color of the blood is red. Why? Because of the presence of the pigment hemoglobin, and it contains iron part heme and the protein part globin. So this is iron, and what is globin? This is a protein. So blood is made up of a pigment which is called as hemoglobin, which reacts with oxygen, combines with oxygen rather, to form oxyhemoglobin. And what is this hemoglobin? This is a pigment which makes the color of the blood red. So heme is iron and globin is protein, as you can see here. So this is very essential for the well-developed and highly developed organism and larger organism. So hemoglobin is very, very important, which carries oxygen, because it has a strong attraction towards oxygen. And what happens to the CO2, that is carbon dioxide, is transported in dissolved form in our blood. CO2 is transported in the dissolved form in our blood, not in the gaseous form, but in the dissolved form. And so what happens, see, in the alveoli, the diffusion of gases takes place. So see, oxygen will be given out by the alveoli. That means from high concentration to lower concentration it will go. And the pulmonary veins, the only vein which will carry oxygenated blood, and the pulmonary artery is the only artery which will carry the deoxygenated blood, that is the blood rich in carbon dioxide. So what is happening here in alveoli is diffusion of gases takes place, and the blood has to go through the heart for pumping, because each cell needs its oxygen. So the heart will have to pump the blood to every part of the body. So from the lungs it has to go to the heart, and this pure or oxygenated blood will be carried to the heart by the pulmonary vein. Purified air, oxygenated blood will be carried to the heart by the pulmonary veins. And then there are arteries which will carry the oxygenated blood to the cells. So if you can see here, alveoli is the position where diffusion of gases takes place, and The pulmonary vein will carry the oxygenated blood to the heart for further pumping. Arteries will carry and distribute the oxygenated blood to the cells. Now, what happens to the carbon dioxide full blood? From the alveoli, only oxygenated blood will be given out, and the carbon dioxide filled blood will come to the alveoli of the lungs and will be taken by the pulmonary artery for purification. So from where it will go, again the heart will help to pump it out towards the lungs for purification. So carbon dioxide filled blood is carried to the heart by different veins from the cells to the heart. This will send it to the lungs by the artery, that is pulmonary artery, which will carry it to the lungs for purification. So this artery reaches to the alveoli where carbon dioxide is given out. Oxygen is taken out by the vein towards the lungs from the alveoli, distributed to all the parts of the body. This way a circle continues in our body. So blood has to pass twice through the heart, one towards the lungs and one for pumping it to the whole body. So today we have discussed up to this much, and in the next lecture I'll continue with this only. So just go through this video once, try to understand whatever I have told in this video. So here you can see that the main part where diffusion of gases takes place, which is richly supplied with blood vessel, is the alveoli, the air sacs, the unit of the lungs. So pulmonary vein is the only vein which will carry the oxygenated blood towards the heart for further pumping, and pulmonary artery is the only blood vessel which will carry the blood that is filled with carbon dioxide from the heart to the lungs for further addition of oxygen, so that carbon dioxide is given out and oxygen can be taken in. This way it goes on, and the process is diffusion. So alveoli is richly supplied with blood capillaries. This carries on its function of giving in and taking in, that is giving in oxygen and taking in of carbon dioxide, so that carbon dioxide can be eliminated outside the body during the process of exhalation or breathing out or expiration. So breathing is in inspiration or inhalation, breathing out is expiration or exhalation. Breathing in takes in oxygen, breathing out gives out carbon dioxide. So go through this video once and try to understand each and every point.